What is going on, Fantasy Alarm Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman. Matt Selz with me, Ryan Hallam with me. The band is back together for the Family Times podcast here on fantasyalarm.com. Selz, what's going on, man? Welcome back.
I'm good. I had a nice little, not quite as relaxing vacation as I would have liked last week, but it was good. Didn't have to deal with it snowed 3 times in Lincoln while we were not here. So
wow.
Weather was better on the East Coast, I guess, in the 40s.
Isn't it late March already? Like mid-March at this point?
Yeah, it's unusual, but, such is the case with the changing climate and all that good stuff. So we'll see. It's warmer now, so we're good. But
is it late March? It's the same day there that it is here, but
listen, man, I forget what time of the month it is sometimes. Ryan, it's the month of March. We're in full fantasy baseball draft mode right now. You forget what day it is sometimes when you have multiple sports going on. Leave me alone, okay? Leave me alone.
I'm only an hour earlier.
I know, okay, I get it.
4 days ahead.
Technically, you were same time zone. So what? I
was this time.
I just owned you. I owned Matt Selz, the Schwab. Something
that's illegal to own a person, though.
Okay, you know what? Fine. I bought you in the auction for $3, Selz. Okay.
Also, we're both Jewish. There's nasty stories in the.
Okay. So Ryan, how about that pizza at 1 a.m. in New York City on Saturday? It was a good time, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I remember most of the pizza at 1 a.m. It was a very good weekend down at Tout Wars. Had a great time seeing everybody, hanging out Saturday night, having having several beers, having some late pizza. Drafted on Sunday was a lot of fun. I have a good group of people to play against, so it's definitely was a fun 40 hours. If it just wasn't so damn cold.
Right,
Sunday was freezing.
Dude, I didn't wear a jacket both days out because during the day I thought it would be warm enough, and I forget that the city, it shoots down 15, 18 degrees instantly. So I had brought my leather jacket up to New York with me to cover these events, and I barely even wore it until Sunday morning when I was leaving. I finally learned my lesson there. But I learned a lot of lessons, guys, especially about what players people are into. I want to just say this because I know that we've discussed some fantasy baseball auction strategy. This is something I was thinking about. Normally in auctions, whether it's in football, basketball, baseball auctions I'm involved in for fantasy sports, you see a lot of big names coming off the board first. You normally have your heavy hitters, especially in baseball. In one of those Tout Wars auctions, the American League only one, I had never seen such a divide, guys, between bigger names and lesser knowns being mixed into the first 40, 50 bids, because normally they try to get a lot of the bigger players off the board, but then we're midway through the auction and you're still getting late 20s guys that are coming up for bidding, which I think is very interesting because I'm of the opinion of, depending on where you're at in the first round of bidding, for me, when on auctions, I've always believed this. I've written about this in the Fantasy Football Draft Guide, and I really do think this is something. I don't have any scientific, evidence to back it up. But in the auctions I've been, if I ever have the first bid, whereas maybe if I was somewhere else down the line in the first round, I throw out a player I don't want to get that money off the board, I feel that you can get that first player, the first player put up for nomination, I feel like you could get at a discounted rate because people got to get used to the bidding and everything like that. And that's worked for me in basketball. It's worked for me in football. And in the past, it's worked for me in baseball too. And I kind of thought of that because you don't want to bring up the $1 player because then you're a little bit of a target in that regard. People know you sneak someone by. But maybe you bring up a tier 2, tier 3 player, you get them for $5 or $6 less. And Selz, that's valuable money you'd be saving.
It is. It definitely gives you the proverbial hammer when we get to dollar days, right? Because you've saved $5-6 on a guy earlier in the auction. But I was unable to listen to the broadcast for Tout Wars. The car that we took across country did not have Sirius XM in it. So
thanks for the support.
Apologies. It's in my other car, but that car doesn't do so well on road trips. But yeah, from your description, if I wonder why people were bringing up cheaper guys earlier. Maybe just trying to sneak them past.
Diego Castillo was brought up in the first 10 bids. I was sitting there shocked.
Okay.
I think people do it because they think people are like, well, I don't want to spend $3 on this guy. I can fill that position later on, and they're in there for the big bid. I don't subscribe to that either. It's been fully documented. I always start with guys I don't want. I don't know that I've ever had the very first nomination, but I'm always in on I completely agree. The first nomination almost always goes $3 to $5 cheaper than what you think. I'm trying to think of who was the first one on Sunday. I know Julio Rodriguez.
By the way, in the Tout Wars head-to-head auction that took place too. So you were in one of these.
Yeah, Julio Rodriguez was my first buy, and I know it was early. I had second, and I threw up Judge because I knew Joe Galena as a huge Yankee fan. I was trying to get him to spend a bunch of money. It might have been Acuna who went for 40, but I got Rodriguez for 37. So it was one of those couple guys. And Soto was the highest off the board with $44 in my draft.
Yep, we saw that. That was very popular as well. By the way, Selz, you mentioned holding the hammer. I got to ask you this, man. Is holding the hammer, which means, by the way, keeping the most money, for all those that don't know what holding the hammer is, it's said a lot when it comes to auctions, keeping the most money or a good amount of money so that by the time you hit the second half of your auction, at least you think you can control the game by having the most amount of money to spend on whoever you want. But do you think that maybe holding the hammer is more impactful in fantasy football auctions than baseball because there are fewer positions? And with baseball, the positions are so widespread that you're going to get good values anyway. And it's just when you're holding the hammer, you could be more of a target from everybody else with more positions to fill. You get what I'm saying by that?
Yeah, but I also think it's more likely that somebody falls through the cracks in a baseball auction than a football auction because there are more players, right? And especially if you're in a league where people are nominating dudes who should not be in the top 50 inside the top 50. I think there's a lot of more chance that people will fall through the cracks. And it's not saying that I want to overbid on guys late in the auction. I want to fill out my roster with the guys that I want, and having the hammer allows me to go get the guys that I want, because at that point I'm not concerned about value really, especially in a redraft. There's no purpose in waiting for value, right? In keeper leagues, I get it because you're trying to save yourself money in the following years. But for me, it's about being able to go after the guys that I want late in a draft, especially in the league. My home league does it differently, and I really quite like the way we do it, where we draw a team out of a hat. Right, we draw a team name, so like the Yankees, and then we read off their roster in position groupings in alphabetical order, and you bid on the guy when his name gets called, right? So the trick with that is you don't know when a team is coming up. So saving money throughout the auction makes sense a lot of times in my league because, let's say, for sake of argument, the Padres are the last team up, and a lot of people haven't paid attention to the teams that are left. Having the hammer and being able to go fill a roster with any number of the Padres guys is a massive advantage in my league. In a standard league, I still like it because I get
anything like this in my life before.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Like going team by team?
Yeah.
Wow. Ryan, have you ever heard of anything like this?
No, not at all.
Since 2400 BC. I've never heard of anything like this.
Definitely not. I mean, I get, and there's another layer of strategy to it, but that's a lot of layers of strategy.
I kind of don't like that. It restricts you, Selz.
Not really. You still get to choose who you want to go after.
I'm out, Selz. Selz, you play with some weirdo rules in your fantasy leagues, man. You do. In football, like, wow. Just amazing. I mean, look, hey, man, whatever keeps you and your league interested in the fantasy sport, there are many different ways to play. I'm in an offense only fantasy baseball league. No pitching whatsoever, and no normal draft. You have the entire player pool, and you pick from the hitters. I think it's like 8 or 10 guys. You pick people every single week, and you can only use them 18 times throughout the season.
So there's like 8 weeks you can't use a guy?
Yeah, something like that.
But does everybody get the same?
Yes, everyone has the same player pool.
So it's a DFS league with limitations on.
Except no price points or anything.
No, but it's the same concept that everybody gets the same. So like, everybody could draft Aaron Judge.
Yes, it's
same
when
week
you want to use him. Like if I know Aaron Judge has the worst pitching coming up, then probably everybody's going to use him that week.
I can see that taken away from things if everyone's using the same guy.
No, and I get that. I'm just saying that there are definitely unique leagues out there.
I mean, going back to having the hammer in a regular auction, I've never really. I will say that when I first started doing auctions, I did subscribe to that, and I really never really felt like I finished the season well. And to me now, I'd rather spend an extra $1 on, say, Matt Olson or Nolan Arenado or Yordan Alvarez, the guys that I have, than holding the hammer and getting to spend an extra $1 on Alex Verdugo to get him, or Santander to get him, or these they are still quality players at the end, but they're a significant step down from the stars. And if you are holding your money to the end, I think you miss out on a lot of the upper echelon players to get a lot of the middle echelon players. And so with free agency and no one's roster is going to look the same. So to me, and this is how I've had a little more success, but not like I'm winning leagues left and right. The bottom of the roster guys might not be there in your team in July anyway. So why am I going to wait and hold $6 for a guy who might not be there? And the worst thing you can do is have $6 at the end to just bid on anyone you want. That means you left money on the table that you could have bid on other players.
Yeah, I'm not saying I intentionally slow roll my auction to have.
Well, yours is different. Yours is a whole different ballgame.
Well, no, I mean in a standard auction. I'm not slow rolling my draft.
But some people do sell, so some people intentionally don't spend.
I will say that there are 3 or 4 guys in my home league that intentionally sit out teams that they should be bidding on.
Stupid.
So that they have money left in case a team shows up at the end. But the problem is with about 5 teams to go, the teams that are there, and they still just sit there. And then they have, like, one guy a couple of years ago had $10 left out of a $100 budget. So that's 10% of his budget left because he just slow rolled it. And that's too much, right? I'm not saying you sit there and you wait and you blow half your budget in the second half of the draft. Go get the guys you want. If you happen to get deals and you have the hammer, that's the best of both worlds. I don't sit there and intentionally go, I'm not getting Aaron Judge because I want to spend $3 extra on Alex Verdugo. That doesn't make any sense. But I'm also not going to go $2 extra on a mid-tier guy when I think a guy who's slightly below him gives me basically the same return, right? So it's all about, to me, is roster construction. If you're happy with how the top of your draft is going, that's fine. You can sit there and wait for values to fall to you. If you need to push, then push. It's
right. A few, by the way, auction psychology tips that I can give you, because there's a lot of auction psychology that you don't seem to think about because you're so focused on the players. Number one, if you want a player, you go after that player. If you're in a bidding war, though, and you're going back and forth, dollar to dollar, and it's you and one other person, everybody else just hanging out, go up $2 if you really want the player. Switch it up. Also, something else you could do is if you're going back and forth at a fast pace, sit there 8 seconds. You have the time, change the pace. You want to try, when you're in that moment and you get that adrenaline rush, you want to try to throw off your opponent. And if you have a certain number that your player is going to and it's down and it's approaching that number, then go up 2 instead of going up 1. It'll throw that person off right away unless they really desperately want that player when they see the $2. But they're used to it. You get into a rhythm. 1, 1, 1. Throw a 2 out there. Throw a $2 increase. I'm telling you, it'll stop them in their tracks. Whoa. They went up $2. Uh-oh. Now they're thinking. You want to get them thinking. You want them to hesitate. He or she who hesitates has lost. You want that hesitation. And that is the way you're going to get it. Changing the pace of the bids back and forth. And sometimes going up that extra dollar throws off their game plan in the moment.
Now, what do you think on some people will say you're going $12. They'll immediately go 13. Like right away. Okay, 14, 15. Like, where are you on poker face towards bullying? Because I mean, I think there's some merit to both, but I think once you get to a certain point, like, all right, bullying, you get to point across, hey, I really want this person, but at the same time, you've often, okay, I think this person will go another $1. Let's make them spend $2 more. So I think there's that to take into consideration also.
That happens all the time in my home league. There's a woman who really loves her favorite team,
right?
Orioles, and so anytime an O's player comes up, she's immediately quick on the draw, upping it, and you're like, okay, I can push you for a ride and cost you later in the auction. And so if there's a guy that I want, I tend to take a little longer to counter because it's like you're thinking about it. You don't know if you're going to go up another, buck or whatever your auction unit is or whatever. So I tend to slow roll it, and I know that people get upset because it takes a little long. Like, I'm not talking dollar bidding Kyle Tucker all the way up to like $35.
Right. Oh, I also hate that. Don't put Kyle Tucker for $2. For God's sakes.
Toss him out for close to what you expect them to go for, and it'll cut down on the bidding, and you have a better shot of getting them for, like, if you expect Kyle Tucker to go, what did he go for in your head-to-head?
39.
Okay. So if you toss him out for, let's say, 35. If he goes for 39, it's only taken 5 bids to get him there, right?
Right.
B, if you're like, 35, it's going to give everybody pause. Like,
yep,
I can't get a deal on this guy.
4 or 5 people are out immediately.
Right. So you cut out half the room. You take the bidding process out of it, so you speed stuff up, which people appreciate in an auction. And there's a decent chance you can get them for a deal because everybody goes, ooh, I can't get, like, if somebody was hanging out hoping that they would, cap the auction at 32 and you get them for a steal, now that's surpassed, right? You're not getting it. So I tend to like tossing, like, if it's a guy that I know should be going for a decent chunk of money, I tend to toss it out for close to that.
I like that too, because again, it's less bidding. There's less hope that player is going to go at a heavily discounted rate if you set the barometer and you set the line, and thus you're setting the tone. My suggestion for that is, if you want the player, you put him out at the bid. If you don't want the player, maybe you go a little bit lower and hope the bidding picks up momentum. If you want the player, though, Selz, you're totally right. You want the player, you put him out there. If it's a tier 1, tier 2 guy, you put him out there with that chunk of money. Ryan just asked about auction bullying. Here's the thing with auction bullying. You're either a bully or you're not. It's hard to be a tweener. It's very, very difficult because part of auction bullying is setting the tone for the auction. So you're going to have to be aggressive with upbidding, meaning that you're going to have to take it on the chin a few times. You're going to end up with players you possibly don't like for a value you don't like. You are going to take it on the chin. You're willing to do that, and you've got a good under the radar plan of how to still get a team. That's totally fine. Industry leagues, I remember Chris List from RotoWire. He had to make a decision because he's an auction bully, and he took it on the chin. He actively made that decision. You're not going to have that kind of success in industry leagues. Where auction bullying works the best is something that Selz said, home leagues. Like, for instance, in one of my football leagues, I play with a very big Philadelphia fan base. And I know that when Miles Sanders was on there, and even who was going in the 7th, 8th round, let's just say, at the time, I knew I'd be able to start putting those guys out there. Jalen Hurts, put him out there immediately. That's when I will start, putting out players out there. Come on. I mean, you guys know this guy. I was in a auction with Bennett Carroll. Everybody knows he's one of the biggest White Sox fans out there. I only put up White Sox. I knew he was going to go in, and then he messaged me eventually. He's like, I know what you're doing. And I kept doing it. And so it works in a home league when you've got multiple people that want, and especially if you know that they need to get someone from their beloved Eagles, which is something else that's stupid. When you play fantasy sports, your fandom, your allegiance as a sports fan goes out the window. You are signing a contract, not a physical one. You are signing a proverbial contract that states that this team is what matters. This team is who you're rooting for. This team that you're building is your investment. Yes, you could still root for the team. Like I root for the Mets still. But at the same time, I'm not going to biasly draft any of my fantasy teams, nor am I not going to ignore other teams like, being from New York, I know so many fantasy baseball players who are Yankees fans who intentionally won't draft Red Sox. You're screwing yourself when you do that. It's stupid. Yeah. You're eliminating player pool and actually a pretty good ballpark too when you do that. So I don't understand. If you're not going to fully invest in your team, you shouldn't be playing. And there are people out there that won't play, that even work in the fantasy industry, that won't play fantasy sports because they root for a certain team. That's a decision they make. If you can't make that decision, then you shouldn't be playing fantasy sports. Eliminating a team, and no, when you tell me you won a championship and you didn't even intentionally draft Red Sox, that doesn't impress me one bit. You got lucky. Congratulations.
I mean, you probably get away with the drafting Red Sox this year, but I know what you're saying. It's funny that I actually got a message this morning from Michael Stein, Fantasy Judgment. I'm sure you guys, he's a big Mets fan, so he was asking me a keeper question. He already had Spencer Strider, and he was deciding between three pitchers, one of which is Max Fried. And I was like, and who was the best of the three? It was Fried, Darvish, and Christian Javier. And I was like, well, I have Fried the highest, but I could see you not wanting two Braves as a Mets fan. He's like, nope, might as well take advantage of them being good and win fantasy, even if my team isn't going to beat them. So, yeah, you got to.
Well,
I'll
that's
draft
an interesting question because do you want to tie two keepers up with the same rotation?
It was a keeper, and he had the third pick, and he knew one of the three pitchers were going to.
Oh,
so
okay.
he was using his draft pick, his first pick.
I think there are teams you could do that with, like for instance, Seattle. I think you could do that with Seattle. I want to try to get in my big draft is coming up on Sunday. I want to get at least one of Castillo, Kirby, or Gilbert. Like I desperately want one of those three on my teams. I would be open to two from that squad.
Yeah, I mean it's not an automatic no from me. It just depends on the team, right? Like I'm not going after two Pirates pitchers. Not a chance.
Going after one
not
Pirates
going
pitcher.
after.
Pirates have two pitchers?
I mean, Mitch Keller looks better, and Roansy Contreras I actually just traded for in a dynasty league.
I call him Ronus. Sometimes I'll call Ronus Ronzi.
But like, so it depends on the team. But yeah, you cannot. And again, I hate to keep going back to my home league, but this one woman with the Orioles just. It's amazing because she sticks so much to the Orioles that you can literally see her success in the league ebb and flow based on how good the Orioles have been that year. So like right now, she was in the money last year because she had a bunch of Orioles and they had a pretty decent season. Now a bunch of her carryovers are Orioles, like Gunnar Henderson is one of them. She's got a few other guys. And so her financial ability to win in this league is tied to how good of a farm system or season the Orioles are going to have, which is an entirely stupid way to do fantasy sports. But, I understand if you want to get at least one person from your favorite team, because then when you watch them, you have extra motivation to root for. But to stock your entire, like you don't see Ryan going out there and doing nothing but Cardinal. Like I want my entire infield to be nothing but Goldie and Arenado and Edman and Brendan Donovan. Sure, that's a really good infield, but there's also a chance that if it goes horribly wrong, so does your fantasy season. So don't just stock up on your favorite team.
I will say I do have three of them though.
I noticed that.
I think I got them all at pretty good values. It wasn't
right,
like
but
I
you
went
gotta
out.
Fine.
Yes, you do have.
In my home league, in Selz, I didn't screw up the keepers this year. Freaking idiot. I'm a freaking idiot. keeping freaking Jesse Winker going to Seattle last year, throwing back Alek Manoah. I can't believe that. And dude, I don't know what happened. I had already kept the pitcher. I had 4 keepers. I'm like, you know what? I could probably get this guy in the first 5 rounds. Nope, he went in like round 2, and that was that. And I remember going to Selz and being like, yeah, I kept Winker. And he's like, oh, I would have kept Manoah. And I'm like, wow, maybe I should have thought about this a little bit more. I'm so stupid.
Yeah,
but
by the way, this real quick, I get keeper questions all the time, and I know a lot of people keep prospects, like target hitters as prospects, because you don't know what'll happen with a pitcher. But in a keeper situation, I lean towards keeping the pitcher more than the bat. You can find bats everywhere. The difference between like the 10th second baseman and the 30th second baseman is practically nothing, right? The difference between the 10th best pitcher and the 30th best pitcher is a massive difference. So if you're torn between they're about the same value, they cost about the same, or the pitcher costs a little bit more, I'm leaning towards the pitcher.
Here's who I kept Selz. Let me tell you, because I know I didn't screw it up this year. Trey Turner with my first round keeper, Aaron Judge with my second round keeper, then Justin Verlander. See, I'm a Mets fan, but still, Justin Verlander as a 6th round keeper, which I thought was tremendous. And then, see, I'm a Mets fan, Austin Riley as a 14th round keeper.
That's impossible to say no to.
Right, but you know what? There's no bias with me. My fantasy teams, I'm a huge fan of the teams that I root for. My fantasy teams are the focus. My fantasy teams take priority. They pay the rent. My crappy New York teams do not.
Yeah, as a Jets fan, I drafted Brady like 7 years in a row because
of course, people won't draft Brady back when he was on the Patriots. You're not going to draft Tom Brady. Don't play fantasy. Just don't do it. Don't do it. And trust
I have no problem.
We want you to. We want subscribers and everything, but you might as well play it to the fullest extent and leave yourself the highest possible outcome to succeed. And by eliminating teams because they're rivals of the team you root for, garbage. That's not how you play fantasy. Don't do it. And if you come up to me like one of my cousins does, it's like, oh, I'm not drafting any Red Sox and I'm going to win the championship. Doesn't impress me. You got lucky, like I said. So with that, guys, let's go to the family table here on the Family Times podcast here. Selz, you're back in action with us here. You want to lead us off at the family table?
Yeah, I tweeted about this yesterday, but Chris Russo should not be on television. I'm sorry. He shouldn't even be on radio anymore. Mad Dog, you got to go. He is atrociously bad at his job. He's horrible. Your job is to talk about baseball, and you said you were not amused by Shohei Ohtani striking out Mike Trout? Really? Really? And your idea for this was Mike Trout strikes out 175 times a season? No, he doesn't. His average is 156. He's topped 175 one time in his entire career. And by the way, you want another stat about Trout striking out? You want to know how impressive that Ohtani one was? In 61, almost 6,200 career at-bats, that was the 24th time that Mike Trout has struck out on 3 swings and misses. The 24th in 6,200 at-bats. So you want to tell me you were not amused? Really, Chris Russo? Then get the hell off my television. Sorry. He is terrible. And he's... You know how bad he is? He made Stephen A. Smith look like a reasonable guy talking baseball. That's how bad Chris Russo was. I'm sorry. If you want the game to grow, why do we have these old, outdated white guys who are comparing Mike Trout to DiMaggio, which isn't even the comp, by the way. It's Mickey Mantle, because his stats are basically identical to Mickey Mantle at the same time. But you want the game to grow, and you have these old white guys going, I don't like the pitch clock. I don't like the shift band. I don't like this. I don't like the bat flipping. I don't like the strikeouts. I was not amused by watching a Japanese guy strike out Mike Trout, who are teammates, in a do-or-die situation in the bottom of the ninth. Get him off television. Should not be talking about baseball. He's bad for the game. He sounds like crap. You're ill-informed. You knew this topic was coming, and you still couldn't do the proper research? Really? Really? Go away.
That's a Radio Hall of Famer you're talking about right there. So, well, look, everybody's got their opinion.
He's a Hall of Famer, and he still knows what he's talking about, and he's fine. But there comes a time and place for every Hall of Famer to go away and stop talking.
I hear you, and I don't know what Mad Dog. I mean, I don't know what Mad Dog thinks in general about the WBC. It sounds like he doesn't think much of the WBC, and he probably views things as like Edwin Diaz getting hurt as, see, this is why we shouldn't have the WBC. I mean, because I think the WBC is someone who wasn't really thinking too much about it, who got sucked in to everything that it brought to baseball, to the life it brought and the focus it brought onto baseball made a lot of people, I feel like, more excited about the season starting. And then you've got the people who are like, this is bad for baseball. Players are getting hurt now. Edwin Diaz, the best closer in baseball, now out for the year, hurting himself celebrating. I mean, look, it can happen to anybody. And my guess is that Mad Dog doesn't think much of the WBC, and a lot of these guys who are old heads, like in baseball analysts like Mad Dog, they have trouble with changing and the evolution of the game. But like you said, Selz, the bigger picture should be, how do we make baseball better to get more of an audience? And if speeding it up a little bit, the Ghost Runner is stupid. They should get rid of that. That I freaking can't stand and hate. And there is nobody out there. There is not one person, not Matt Selz, not Ryan Hallam, not Bender, not anybody that can convince me that the Ghost Runner is good for baseball. The shift, the pitch clock, speeds it up a little bit. I'm all fine for that. But the Ghost Runner is the one thing that I'm going to die on that hill, that it's stupid and it changes the outcome of the game.
Yeah, two other things about the WBC real quick. And then one, 97.4% of televisions were watching the Japanese-USA game when Shohei Ohtani struck out Mike Trout. 97.4% of televisions in the country of Japan. Can you imagine that many TVs in the U.S. being tuned to the same thing at the same time? No, I can't. Secondly, there was a pitcher who was as of yet undiscovered, and I can't remember who he pitched for. Apologies for that. But he struck out the heart of the Dominican order, right? He struck out Machado, Soto, and one other huge bat. You know what happened the next day? He was signed to a minor league contract to come play for a major league team because they saw what they liked and they signed him. This kid would have been throwing in dirt baseball fields for the next, 10 years before being discovered. So you want to tell me it doesn't matter? These kids are getting shots that they never got before. And how about the Czech electrician who struck out Ohtani and then his baseball jersey sold out in Japan because Ohtani went with a signed jersey and gave it to him. And then, it matters. I'm sorry your guys got injured, but Gavin Lux got injured in spring training.
I'm for it. I'm for the WBC. Ryan, I want to let you get in on this. What do you think?
I will say I have never watched it. I still did not watch it this year. For the first time in probably a year, there was something on Twitter that I was actually enjoying listening to people talk about because so many people seem so excited about it. But I did not watch it. I mean, obviously, Mets fans are not thrilled. Astros fans are not thrilled with Altuve getting hit. Arenado got hit in the hand with a pitch. Thankfully, he was okay. And I just saw Wainwright's going to start the season on the injured list. So I would imagine that's probably WBC related. But yes, it can happen anywhere. But clearly, it's putting Edwin Diaz aside, who was a celebration injury. I mean, it does put you in a little bit more situation to get injured. I will say, I'm not buying it because they're not taking spring training to ramp up. I'm well assuming that these guys who know they're playing this are getting themselves ready earlier than normal players. Yeah. So, I don't think that, these pitchers throwing for the first time in a game of WBC. So anyone who thinks that, I think is dumb. I might watch it next time. I think it's about 3 years for the next
2026.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't pique my interest enough to watch it. I was kind of a little buried in NCAA basketball stuff for work, so I didn't really get to catch it. And I was out at Tout Wars, so it was on TV, but I really didn't. So it definitely caught my interest for the first time. I was never even remotely interested in it before. So I would think in 3 years I'll probably tune in some. So yeah, it takes some time to get these things. It's not going to be the World Cup, the soccer tournament for the entire world in its first 10 years or 15 years it's been around. It takes time to build. It certainly I think took a gigantic step forward this time, and I expect next time it'll be even bigger.
For me, what I'm bringing to the family table is just some advice to everybody, because I know it's fantasy basketball playoffs and talking with a lot of you in Discord. And again, I want to first say a few things here. we all have busy lives at Fantasy Alarm. We all do a lot of work, but Discord is there for a reason. And I am here and everybody else is here to help you. And you shouldn't shy away from answering questions. Now, just like anybody else, there are parts of the day that are busier than others. Sometimes you can't just answer the question. Sometimes you're in the middle of an assignment. Sometimes you're on a show. There are going to be times where, we just don't get back to you for a couple hours. That's okay. Don't take that as a sign of disrespect. Don't take that as we don't want to talk to you or anything. But there are going to be times where we're right there, available, ready to roll. And then there are going to be times where it might take a couple of hours for a response. But that doesn't mean you don't stop asking, please. We are all here to help you. And when it comes to basketball, especially right now in your playoffs, I am here to help all of you. And I'm going to tell you guys that you might have to drop some of your impactful players that are playing short slates over the next couple of weeks in order to get the guys playing full slates. Look to see who's playing 4 games when it comes to waiver wire pickups. You need the production at this point. Even if you're in Roto and you're sitting there 5-6 points ahead, no lead is safe. Things change very quickly overnight. Don't coast, and make sure that, if you're in head-to-head league, once the teams are eliminated from the playoffs, unless there's a prize, a stupid consolation prize, you're turning off waiver access, adds and drops for those teams out of the playoffs. And number 2, look for those teams that are playing full 4-game slates. Some of the teams that are playing 2-game slates this week are playing 4 games, like Detroit, for instance. They're playing 4-game slates next week. So make sure you're constantly looking at that. That's the best advice I can give you. And commissioners, turn off waivers to those teams that are completely out of it. No prize on the line for 4th place or whatever mediocrity prize you want. So make sure you're turning off waivers there. That's the advice that I'm going to give. But Discord, please feel free. Hit us up in the basketball Discord, the season-long one. You can also hit me up. I know a few of you DM me directly. You could do that, too, on Discord as well for Fantasy Alarm. Ryan, what do you bring it to the
You think Halliburton's playing on tomorrow?
I don't know. Dude, I don't know anymore, man. I've thought that maybe he'd be playing for the last 3 games, and I've been 0 for 3, so I'm a bad person to ask, man. I don't know if Indiana's just keeping him out. It's so weird with them because there's some teams that are obvious. Your Spurs being very obvious, messing with their rosters all the time. The Pistons, they're being very obvious. We're hearing that Damian Lillard could be shut down in the next few games, and the Blazers might take a hike and just play their bench the rest of the way to better position themselves. But the Pacers are one of those teams where they're still playing their main guys. So maybe this game upcoming, maybe next game, but I'd have a backup plan ready, Ryan. That's my
Yeah, I got Nembhard. I've been playing him.
Good.
Can we get Jokic to take a day off ever? Does that guy ever rest?
No, he's fighting for the MVP right now. Him and Embiid are in a I don't want to say a dead heat. Embiid's actually surpassed him on the odds that I saw on DraftKings Sportsbook. It's up to the voters, but both of them are vying for the MVP. I was actually very surprised because last night, we're recording this here on Thursday, last night I had Joel Embiid over 33.5 points with no James Harden, and the Sixers were beating the Bulls so badly that Embiid didn't even come out of the locker room for the second half of the game, and he didn't even play. He barely took shots. So stupid and frustrated. So be careful with all that, because if a team's up big, they're going to bench or start. Nothing you can do about it. We had no news ahead of time that Embiid's minutes were going to be watched. What about you?
I mean, I don't have much for the family table. It's spring. I'm happy for warm weather. 3 of us are going to be grilling, having some good food, having people over. Can't wait. So happy. The clock's changed. I hate people who are like, oh, I lose an hour of sleep. You get an hour of daylight every day for 6 months. It's worth that hour of sleep. So I'm sitting here, I'm looking at my deck and just excited to be out there and spending time outdoors, having fun, dogs running around, and just winter is so close to over.
I can't wait, man. I was telling my wife, I gotta grill some chicken. I just gotta freaking grill some chicken. I just want to grill 15 pieces of chicken for the week. Keep the temp low. Keep me out there a little bit. Have my veggie tray in there too. Put some seasoned peppers and onions in there, man. It's been a few weeks because it's been just so crazy with the traveling. I know Selz got a new cookbook as well. I just want to grill and grill a lot. It's so much fun. And for those, by the way, that don't cook, I wasn't someone that really could do much more besides make an egg white omelet. Grilling has changed my life. It's changed my perspective on things, and I love it so much. And I have one motto, and that is grill everything. And that is exactly what I do. And it's so much fun to go out on a date.
And I'll tell you, as someone who used to do that, eventually you will graduate to inside cooking, because that's where I started too. And then once you get the hang of it, once you start getting a little confidence, then you start doing stuff inside, and you'll be well rounded soon enough.
Yeah, I don't want to become a baker. I'm not a
baker
cook.
either.
I don't
not
my wife bakes. I cook.
Mine too.
I like mixing and matching things and just sticking things in recipes that may not belong, and you can't do that with baking, because then
That's
stuff
what
goes
Guy
awry.
Fieri does, though, man. You see the menus that he has at his like new restaurants.
Bro, that's banging.
But that's what he does. He combines things. Yeah, I mean, you just see him take up one bite of
hair
food.
dye and hair gel for a personality.
Yeah,
I hate that guy.
yeah. You hate Guy. Guy hates.
Stop talking.
By the way, I made hobo packs the other night for dinner, and they were delicious.
Nice, very good. You cook with the bacon grease too. You go to the next level there. You keep the bacon grease. That's smart. My grill has a little side pot, and I put the pan on there, and sometimes I'll grill some bacon. I'll put, by the way, a little like maple seasoning on there too. You get like a little maple glazed bacon, doesn't hurt anyone. I'll then save that grease and gently put it on like certain meat like you are, but sometimes I'm just in the moment, I forget. You have bacon grease as an essential part of what you're cooking, Selz. So Selz, he can be the next Julia Child over here. Then you take the bacon grease and you put it on.
Well, for the hobo packs that I made, the grilled potatoes, I literally just put uncooked bacon on top of the potatoes and wrapped them in foil. And then as the bacon cooked, the bacon grease dropped down and became the liquid to cook the potatoes and the bacon grease. So
amazing, man. I got to go get a chicken sandwich right now. So with that, let's wrap it up here, guys, and just let you know fantasy baseball and the MLB season starting up. If you haven't gone to fantasyalarm.com, get your free living draft guide that's up there, from rankings to prospects to sleepers to busts to mock drafts here that we've done as a staff as well, and predictions. All are up there. Get ready for DFS as well. If you're an NBA, we'll keep hanging with us there. NBA's DFS and season long as well. Give Ryan Hallam a follow on Twitter at Fighting Chance. Give Matt Selz a follow at The Selzman. I'm at Fenstee Sports. We'll be back next week, but for now, as we always end, a family that sticks together wins together.